Good morning to organizer. My name is T. Lip Singh, DBA student from University Utara, Malaysia. My today topics to present is determinant of sales tax compliant among small and medium enterprise in Malaysia. Okay, let me go to the introduction for my research. So many countries rely heavily on taxation as a source of government revenue. Malaysia main source of income are direct indirect taxation. Collecting tax revenue is essential for the government to finance its operating and development expenditures. About 50% of the total revenue collected is generated for corporate income tax and various types of direct tax such as custom import duty, goods service tax, sale and service tax. So this study will focus more on indirect taxation, namely the sale and service tax, as a source of government revenue. So SST is imposed when the service or product is delivered to the final consumer. So in September 2019, the Minister of Finance announced that the goods and service tax was abolished and replaced by sale and service tax. This is called SST version 2.0. So despite the various features measure undertaken by Malaysia government to increase domestic revenue collection, the annual report demonstrates a sharp rise in tax not compliant. Specifically with the goods service tax, annual report 2016, tax not compliant, as mentioned earlier, could have long-term negative impact on finance to grow the development of the country. So judging for the past experience of GST implementation, it is anticipated tax not compliant with the newly reintroduced SST is likely to incur as business will try as much to avoid paying tax. So therefore, it's important for Royal Malaysia Customs Department to trigger this issue upfront to minimize the incident of tax evasion. So since this is lack of empirical study specifically in investigating the determinant of sales tax 2.0 compliant among SME in Malaysia, so the identification of factor influence the behavior compliant taxpayer is crucial, and taxpayer could be influenced and neutral to engage sales tax compliant activity over time. So this study will try to investigate the determinants of tax compliant behavior in the era sales tax 2.0. So for this research, the research objective is two main research objectives. The first one is to examine the level of tax complexity, tax fairness, peer influence, tax law enforcement, tax knowledge, service quality and compliance costs influence sales tax compliance among SME in Malaysia. The second research objective is to investigate the relation between the tax complexity, tax fairness, peer influence, tax law enforcement, tax knowledge, service quality and compliance costs influence sales tax compliance among SME in Malaysia. So the significance of this study, the current study is contribute in several ways to sales tax compliant literature, particularly on tax compliance. So this study will expand Fisher's tax compliant model to examine economic and social psychological factors to investigate sales tax compliance. So unlike past study, most of the research is focused more on direct tax. So this study will examine more on indirect tax, especially on sales tax 2.0 using Fisher model. So the Fisher model is applied for the first time in the post-implementation review of sales tax 2.0 among SME Malaysia. So the analyst suggests expansions to update Fisher model in which 4 significant non-economic considerations will be added into the tax compliant model, including tax law enforcement, tax knowledge, service quality, and compliance costs, to illustrate how the factor influence compliant behavior toward paying tax in Malaysia. So the suggested addition of the model will potentially enhance the literature on tax enforcement, as it could provide guidance on Royal Malaysia Customs in this effort to enhance tax compliance. So this study will add to Malaysia indirect sales tax compliant literature compared to direct income tax. Sales tax received less coverage. So the research will enhance the understanding awareness of sales tax enforcement from a practical viewpoint and provide valuable information to customs authority on the influence of economic factor as well as social psychological enforcement activity in regard on sales tax. So now let us go to the literature review. So sales tax compliant is defined as compliant with procedure and regulation, including accurate reports of actual sales tax paid and received. So sales tax liability, timely payment of all sales tax and reporting of sales. According to RURA 2017, compliant with sales tax can also moreover can define as a correct record of detail in the sales invoice Instead of being prudent in the invoice to pay less sales tax, besides, business entities should have ability to submit accurate and complete sales tax return in full satisfaction and conformity with the regulation and sales tax law of a tax authority. So for the tax complexity, it's categorized as the complexity of the tax system. So the complexity enforcement, the complexity of the rule, of the complexity of the procedure. According to Site 2014, in this study, sales tax complexity is referred to as behavior relevant to the difficult faced by company with sales tax law, including regular adjustment, multiple estimate, and description varies business record. The more sophisticated the tax system, the lower propensity of the taxpayer to comply with the filing of the correct tax return, as well as the collection and payment of tax within the stimulated time frame. So for the tax fairness, so this tax fairness refer to the payment of sales tax to tax authority in fair manner, whereby the incident amount of which equal to the record amount of sales tax. If people believe tax system is equal, they will have strong tendency for complying with the tax system. So it will show the person to be more compliant on the tax. So this study will refer to the tax fairness, such as sales tax distribution rate and sales tax penalty rate. Reason would have identified positive correlation between tax fairness and tax compliance. And literature also show positive relation between tax fairness and sales tax compliance, according to several researchers. And several studies also find, some certain studies find there's no connections between tax fairness and tax compliance. So peer inference is part of the Fisher's model belief and expectation. So this particular peer inference defined as associate or taxpayer. It includes relative, friend, co-worker, and colleague. According to Jensen Mirror 1986, peer group have impacts of a preference, behavior, personal value on taxpayer. So for this present study, define peer inference as the effect of people who are significant influence SME owner manager in the sales tax compliance decision. Its contributes shaping their attitude towards sales tax compliance. In SME, peer have influence tax obligations behavior of their counterpart, and SME will await tax payment if they feel their peer have been evading even with punishment. So tax law enforcement, according to Committee 206, law and this enforcement exist mainly to control and ensure society fulfill the responsible by obeying the law. In an effort to prevent tax evasion, so the government have to depend on criminal and civic penalty. So tax evasion still happen even though tax authority increased the volume in audit. So according to Treaty 205, found that as tax authority increased their audit operation, tax declaration activity by taxpayer will increase correspondingly. So in this study, enforcement of tax law refer to inspection, tracking, auditing, and penalty imposed by custom on manufacturers who fail to register and comply as law on sales taxpayer. So taxpayers who are found guilty are subject to fine by the authority. All right. So now we go to tax knowledge. Tax knowledge refer to the methods how taxpayers know about the tax law and how much they know about the tax related act. So of course it's cover the tax regulation. So if a person do not have a good knowledge of tax knowledge, so it will lead to mistrust and negative compliance. So tax knowledge will allow SME to comply with the tax law and change their perception and attitude. So it will encourage SME to deal with their tax compliance problem and improve their view on tax compliance by develop a supporting atmosphere. So tax knowledge is so important. So taxpayers have to look at the way how to improve their tax knowledge by understanding the tax structure and tax law. So according to some certain researchers like Lu 209, so come out this particular tax knowledge is important to in fact the taxpayer compliant behavior. So other researchers also believe tax knowledge requires strengthened tax compliance discipline among taxpayers, so which imply the tax knowledge have a positive relation with tax compliance. So tax knowledge is a very important issue to prevent tax not compliant. So now look at the service quality. Service quality is a form helping taxpayer to fulfill all the regulatory requirements. So service tax authority can be interpret tax officer, how responsible for assisting, overseeing, handle and preparing all related tax documents for individual, who is the taxpayer in the case. So service quality concerns the perception whether the people are satisfied or not with the service provided. So quality service is a metric of service quality and reflect whether the service fulfills the customer need. So customer service is a significant area of research and affect consumer sentiment. Service quality is defined as the difference between consumer perception of service pre to actual service delivery and their experience service delivered. So according to Chen 2010, define the service level as attempt to satisfy customer expectation and desire to ensure continuity in meeting consumer preference. So tax service efficiency can be described as a standard assessment of taxpayer tax administration. So many researchers have studied the concept of service quality as a framework for tax purpose. So other researchers also find out service quality can refer to sensitivity, informative, and reliability of service to taxpayer. All right. So compliance costs are identified as the mandatory cost the taxpayer should be fulfill their tax obligation. So this compliance costs basically will cover three areas. So basically there are three main component compliance. So which is taxpayer, that means you will consider the what we call the time for taxpayer to spend, and also discover time and psychological costs and the income. So how much the expenses taxpayer need to pay in order to fulfill the tax compliance. So of course, in this present study, so it's just only focus on the what we call time and financial expenses, but does not cover taxpayer psychological costs. So of course, there is a relation between compliance costs and the tax compliance. All right. So of course, some certain study also come up, okay, and they analyze there as correlation between compliance costs and tax compliance. So of course, they are mainly go to significant negative correlation between compliance costs and tax compliance behavior. So what does that mean? There is a sufficient proof to show the higher compliance costs will lead to taxpayer failure to pay the tax. So now we look at this research framework on sales tax compliance. So this study will focus more on Fisher model. Fisher model is from 1992. Which economic and social psychological factor are considered determining tax compliance among SME. So the study was identified 7 independent variables. So namely tax complexity, tax fairness, peer influence, tax law enforcement, tax knowledge, service quality, and compliance costs. And DV will be this particular what we call sales tax compliance. So sales tax compliance will be the dependent variable. And here this is a hypothesis development. Altogether can divide to 7 hypotheses. So H1, there is a negative relationship between tax complexity and sales tax compliance. H2, H3, H4, H5, this is all positive relationship, such as tax fairness, peer influence, tax law enforcement, and tax knowledge. They are showing positive relationship to sales tax compliance. And H6 and H7, H6 is a service quality, also positive relation, except H7 is negative relation. So altogether 7 hypotheses, only 2 hypotheses, H1 and H7 is negative relation. Other 5 will be positive relationship. So of course, for this study, okay, so the tax knowledge, service quality, and compliance costs and tax law enforcement is a new IV add-in to contribute this particular research study. So for this research methodology, so research design will be mainly focused on sales administrator questionnaire survey. So cross-sectional quantitative technique will be used for this research. So for population, this study will be compliance 3001 registered SME with FMM. So FMM is stand for Federation of Malaysian Manufacturers, based on Directory 2018. So this study will use a sample of sales tax registered company located in Selangor State. So estimate 1,300 for total Malaysia SME registered business entity will represent majority portion SME registration. But in terms of this sampling side, so 75% only for SME, 25% is for large company. So just now we mentioned 1,302 is a total population. But after we focus on this small business enterprise, so 75% for 1,302 registered SME, that means the total population will be 977, according to Kinsey and Morgan. So 977 population will represent the sample size roughly 276 sample only. So in terms for this unit of analysis, it will more on focus on individual level. So the individuals taxpayer were selected to participate for this research. So mainly is a company, manufacturers registered with custom, with total sales tax, sales return will be 500,000 yearly, and the head of management such as CEO, directors, senior managers, finance manager will be the target respondent. So they have to be approached to answer the what we call the sales tax compliant behavior survey. All right, and then the sampling method will based on random sampling technique apply. That means each of the respondent got equal chances to respond the questionnaire, and then each individual is chosen entire by chance, and each member of the population have equal chances to respond this question. So altogether will be a target 276 questionnaire to be answered and reply to the questionnaire. So in terms of questionnaire design, they will be using a 5-point Likert scale, ranked from 1 to 5. So 1 stands for strongly disagree, and 5 is show strongly agree. So the unit analysis will be in just now the company level. So of course, like earlier I do mention, so altogether will be 42 item will be request respondent to answer from questionnaire. So you divide to 3 parts, section A, B, C. So in terms of data collection procedure, we will collect through structured questionnaire, distribute to participant with the assistance of HR, or some certain participant will be select through this simple random sampling using the list of FMF 2018. So other methods will be using like through email or through this Google form. Okay, so of course all the study, the data collected will be primarily data. Okay, and data analysis technique will be using the SPSS to do the what we call the analyze. So altogether will be 42 items for the questionnaire. So the technique will be used will be descriptive statistic, reliability statistic, Bayesian correlation, and multiple regressions factors, multiple regressions, and the factor analysis. So in terms of reliability test, so all the alpha value confab structures will be varied from 0.784 to 0.911, under which they are considered acceptable and recommended. So of course the result you can see here. So altogether showing okay, 7 IV and 1 DV. So all the confab alpha is ranked between 0.784 to 0.911. So only okay, service quality are ranked, peer inference and service quality are rated excellent. That would be more than 0.9. Tax knowledge and compliance costs are rated good. There is above 0.8, while the others variables such as tax complexity, tax fairness, tax law enforcement, and sales tax compliance, they are all with the acceptable level. So that will be 0.7, greater than 0.7. So in terms of factor analysis, we'll run factor analysis. Basically, they cover 7 factors contribute to sales tax compliance. So as we know, sales tax compliance is dependent variable. So factor analysis will conduct to confirm the variable of tax complexity, tax fairness, peer inference, and tax law enforcement, tax knowledge, service quality, compliance cost, and sales tax compliance with different construct. So the KMO value after the EFA for tax complexity So all the result you can see here. So totally you can see the construct, like tax complexity got 5 items, tax fairness got 4 items, peer inference 5 items, 4 items, 6 items, 5 items and 6 items, all based on number of factor only 1. So all the KMO is between 0. The lowest is 0.77, and the highest can go up to 0.587. With the total variance explained, also the lower can go for 52.39, and the highest can be go to maximum up to 72.56. All right. So multiple regression analysis. So overall, this multiple regression analysis will use enter method to apply to this study. So overall, the statistical analysis revealed the model was statistically significant as indicated by F value 11.294. So they suggest the model have a significant ability to predict sales tax payer behavior in Malaysia. So altogether represent 59.8% increase over the count of the tax compliant behavior offered by this model. So with the beta 0.258, P equal 0.018, that is for tax complexity, and peer inference tax knowledge. Okay, so altogether only 4 IV were found significant. 3 IV is not significant. Which are the 4 significant is the tax complexity, tax fairness, peer inference, and the tax knowledge. So the other 3 are not significant. So overall, the adjusted R square is 0.326 and R square is 0.358. Okay. So come out the hypothesis finding. Only 4 hypotheses are supported. The other 3 are not supported. So H1, H2, H3, and H5 are supported. All right. Okay, so come to the discussion. So overall, you can find this research taxpayer respondent, they comment. So it's quite challenge for them to fulfill sales tax compliance at the early stage of the what we call implementation. So so basically they need more time to familiar with the tax system. So of course they need more understanding about tax systems, such as how to do a tax planning and tax and what we call the tax those kind of rule and regulation. It will take some time for them to familiar with the sales tax system, such as they take advice from the tax authority. So slowly, respondent have claimed they have confidence level to complete sales tax appropriately and accurately. So it's conclude that tax complexity is inference for tax compliance sales tax. So SME business consider tax complexity may have impact on the level of compliance, as they were aware of the final outcome for not dealing with the sales tax law and regulation. So it was subject to penalty if they are not fulfilled. So tax fairness affects sales tax compliance SME also. So especially they would like to see this sales tax system is fair to them. To improve sales tax compliance, this will indicate the tax authority should set the fair registration threshold and minimize the cost of business compliance with sales tax. So there was a relationship between perceived tax fairness and sales tax compliance behavior. So the result indicate perception of SME of tax fairness might have positive impact on the sales tax compliance behavior. So it will provide a finding result to policymaker and tax authority with information and develop policy. That means this particular result can show the what we call the result to policymaker, right? Okay, peer inference play a significant role in influence one's action to comply with sales tax also is referred to business partner. Of course, the results show positive effect on sales tax compliance. So that is a positive relation. All right, so taxpayer are the impact of business partner on the declaration and reporting of sales tax income, specifically by complying with sales tax law. So the study reversed statistically significant compliance behavior between tax knowledge and sales tax compliance among SME in Malaysia. So the results suggest a higher level of tax knowledge could improve sales tax compliance. It's consistent with the early study that sufficient knowledge is used to minimize sales tax not compliant. So tax knowledge involves sales tax rule, regulation. Tax knowledge is one of the key considerations of voluntary tax compliance. So it's a major role to shaping sales tax behavior. So many literature found the higher tax knowledge will lead to higher tax compliance. So taxpayer will use tax knowledge, especially on tax law, to find solution to tax compliant tax system. So SME taxpayers have the necessary and specific knowledge in the area of sales tax, so they continue compliant with applicable sales tax regulation law. So therefore, adequate sales tax knowledge is very important to influence the tax compliance among taxpayer. So it's suggested manufacturing owners should send their staff to attend courses and seminars conducted by Royal Malaysia Customs frequently, but improve the sales tax knowledge. So taxpayers who have ample knowledge, they have a better position to accurately view their tax liability and do their filing, okay, from time to time. They're expected to submit a complete correct tax return precisely if they have sufficient knowledge to understand the tax system. So overall, it's conclude increasing tax compliance will enhance taxpayer tax knowledge. So come to the conclusion, this present study and file Fisher model can be applied in all indirect tax environment. So it's considered a first, there was conducted in the context of sales tax version 2.0 in Malaysia. So this current study was designed to fill the gap in sales tax compliant literature. The study will expose the factor contribute sales tax compliant, and this study called for future study in the area of sales tax compliant SME in order for better understanding what is the determinant. So the findings have verified tax complexity, tax fairness, peer inference tax knowledge are significantly correlate with sales tax compliance. However, tax law enforcement, service quality, and compare costs were not being remarkable to the impact sales tax compliance. So of course, this complex relation is advanced in extend Fisher tax compliance model. So this particular study also come out a lot of significant inputs to government, tax agency, and public economic policymaker by provide insight into factor affect sales tax compliant behavior. It's provide empirical in the evidence of sales tax compliant behavior SME taxpayer, and also provide valuable information to SME owner managers to improve sales tax compliance in the future. So it's provide crucial info, concern the impacts of factor affect Malaysia's sales tax compliance. They could be used to formulate socio-economic political policy, as well as enable the government to be more realistic and design strategic and policy on tax compliant behavior in Malaysia. So overall, the current study provides serial contribution, particularly in theory, methodology, and practice, as well as offer explanation on the way how tax compliance can be enhanced. So that's all for my research topic on presentation. So thank you very much.